This is Conversations on Careers and Professional Life, a podcast from the Foster School of Business, MBA Career Management Office. I'm your host, Gregory Heller. On each episode, I talk with guests from faculty and staff to students and business leaders about the skills and strategies that can help you design a professional life that you're happy with. On this episode, I have a conversation with Mack Hopen, a member of the Foster class of 2022. Mack is an active member of the NetImpact Club and a leader of the Entrepreneurship and Venture Capital Club at Foster. We spoke in February 2022 as my office was putting on programming about careers in sustainability. Mack has been pursuing just such a career in the sustainability space, and we both thought that his experiences would be valuable to others with a similar career interest. If you haven't already listened to my conversations with Austin Morton and Rachel Hester, two Foster alumni who found careers in sustainability, I recommend you check them out at conversationsoncareers.com/impact, where you'll find the show notes for this episode as well. I hope you enjoy my conversation on careers and professional life with Mack Hopen. So Mack, welcome to Conversations on Careers and Professional Life.
Thanks so much for having me, Gregory.
Why don't you start by telling us just a little bit about your background before deciding to get your MBA?
Sure. Let's go way back to my undergraduate degree. I went to Cal Poly San Luis Obispo, the real one for those of you out there. Studied materials engineering, knew that I always wanted to do something technical, wanted to be an engineer, loved getting my hands on things, loved building things. So figured I'd go down the engineering route and see where that took me. Started my career working in the defense industry in San Diego on aerospace and military electronics. It turned out very quickly to be something that I was less than enthused about. There were a lot of things that did it. Great people, but the technology moved really slowly. It was not as fulfilling as I expected it to be. So I had a chance to move up to the Bay Area and work at a really small company and get my hands in a bunch of different things. So I did some sales work. I got to do some business development on top of doing engineering. And while I was there, I sort of had this realization that my career didn't have the sort of purpose or meaning that I'd hoped it would when I was, starting out, coming straight out of school. I was sort of watching the news in slow motion about all of the different ways that we were, degrading and destroying the planet. And I felt this and couldn't shake that I was an active participant in that, sort of not doing my part, not using the abilities and the skills I had to make it better. So it was around that time that I had been thinking about going back to school to get my MBA. And I had a boss who has been one of my greatest mentors, Trevor Glavin, who had gotten his MBA and just spoke to the value that it had not only professionally for him, but personally as a time to figure out what he wanted to do and how he wanted to do it. So that was sort of the nudge that I needed to come back to business school. And I sort of approached it with the idea that it was going to be this career transition.
So you came to business school with your sights set on doing something that would impact the environment, sustainability, quality of life on this planet. What did you do before setting foot on campus that set you up for this search?
Yeah, so I feel it's going to sound weird, but I feel a little bit fortunate that I was laid off at the start of COVID. I had this sort of 5-month gap where I could almost plan out my plan of attack on how I was going to approach it. So I started by reaching out to some professors, both in the engineering and the business school, asking, hey, I'm an incoming student. Who should I get in touch with about, solar energy, about battery storage, about the electric grid? And probably 40% of those professors were about 60% wouldn't respond because, they're busy people, but 40% were incredibly gracious with their time and their recommendations. So I just started building this sort of list of people that I needed to meet once I got up to campus, and then programs that I should get involved with or companies that I should look into. So that was sort of step one. And then I sort of honed in on a couple that were really fascinating to me. I know you've had Evan Gray on the pod to talk about the Venture Fellow program. So startups have always been sort of, I joke, but in my blood. And I wanted to make sure that I was involved in the Seattle startup community to some degree. So the Venture Fellows program was something that I set my eyes on really early on as wanting to be a part of. And then there's also a fantastic lab on campus under the Clean Energy Institute called the Clean Energy Testbeds. And it's an open access lab that allows the public or researchers to basically use subsidized equipment and staff to bring new clean tech products to market. So as you can imagine, that was right in my sweet spot of where I wanted to work. I had a technical background. I wanted to bring a business expertise to bringing these, innovative products to market and, doing some small part to save the world. So I got in touch with Mike, the director of the Testbeds, pretty early on, before I got to campus actually. And then he said, that's a little early for that, but when you get to campus, like we can set up a time to meet and figure out if we have some stuff for you to do.
So did you know that you wanted to focus in on energy?
Not necessarily. It was more my dad's done startups forever. My grandpa started his own company. So I knew that I wanted to be in a novel space where people were creating and building. And I thought that my skill set best lent itself to, once I did a lot of reading and did a lot of digging over that sort of 5-month fun employment period before school. And I sort of realized that there's a whole lot of people that are trying to go work in sustainability. A lot of them are PhDs that are super incredibly brilliant, but sort of narrow experience-wise, really specialized from a skill set standpoint. And then the other end were these sort of career generalists that were great marketers or great, business developers. And so I was sort of stuck in the middle of, hey, I don't have either of these things. How can I make myself valuable to a 15-person company or a 50-person company that's trying to squeeze every dollar? Because hardware is so much harder than software to bring to market. So how can I make myself as valuable as possible to these companies coming in? And I figured with my manufacturing background, my technical material science degree, and then the business skills that I was going to be learning at school, I could make a pretty compelling case that new hardware to market, basically commercialization, was where I wanted to be. So the fact that UW had a lab that was working on commercialization of these types of products was honestly a big reason that I ended up choosing UW.
So that's the Clean Energy Testbeds. And you mentioned the Venture Fellows program, and listeners can find a conversation in my podcast on that from fall of 2021. Are there other clubs or activities that you got involved in that you think have helped you establish this network and expertise and pursue this career trajectory?
NetImpact is the big one. UW, the Foster program, has a fantastic NetImpact program that has alumni that have gone on to start clean energy companies or sustainability companies or are leading clean, sustainability programs within some of them. And they do a fantastic job of keeping in touch with those alumni. So NetImpact is absolutely, if you have an interest in any of that space, be it, environmental sustainability or, CSR or social or governance issues, NetImpact does a really good job covering all those bases. The other one, I got to do a plug for the club that I'm the president of, EVCC. It is very much an entrepreneurial type club where you get involved and you build what you want to see. So if you want to come and see B2B software sales, you can invite all those speakers to come there. It's very much what you make of it.
And EVCC is the Entrepreneurship and Venture Capital Club.
That is correct. I shouldn't assume that everybody's as hip to the lingo as I am.
Yeah, there you go. So now it's fall of your first year. You're getting all this programming from career management. What are you doing that is like outside of these clubs, outside of working with Clean Energy Testbeds, which you did ultimately start doing some work with? What were some of the other activities you engaged in on a regular basis?
Yeah, so a lot of it was, we were fully remote for my full first year. So I didn't get to implement my plan of attack like I expected to. I expected to be spending time around these electrical and materials engineering labs and meeting researchers and trying to help them figure out if what they were working on was novel. Didn't get to do that. So I had to sort of regroup and figure out, okay, how am I going to get connected? How am I going to learn the lay of the land in the Seattle area where I plan on being for the next couple of years? And a lot of that was good old fashioned LinkedIn cold outreach. A lot of it was asking the people that I did know, be it Elizabeth Stearns or other classmates that had come from sustainability backgrounds. Hey, what have you seen? What do you know? What companies do you like? I did quite a lot of just cold outreach to venture capital firms that were investing in the clean tech or entrepreneurship space and just saying, hey, can I get intro to your portfolio companies? Here's a little bit about me. Here's what I'm trying to do. It was a lot of the sort of people-centric stuff just to help me sort of piece together the landscape that was at the time totally foreign to me. I didn't come from that background. And what I've come to learn is that there isn't really sort of this sustainability space. It's just that the sustainability kernel is growing in all of the sort of existing industries and spaces that, I wasn't familiar with.
What was the cadence of outreach? I mean, how many meetings would you say you were taking a week to meet people and do, what we call informational interviews or coffee chats to learn about their companies and about opportunities and about the space more broadly?
Yeah, so in the fall, it wasn't a ton. I did probably more over that summer before I had started the program. The fall, with everything getting so busy, I was maybe doing one a week, one call a week. And then obviously there was more emails and sort of LinkedIn messages than that. But I'd set a goal for myself to try to do one a week. And I think I hit that most weeks. I'm sure there are weeks that I missed, but I did a pretty good job of getting out and just talking to people. So many, like, the Seattle community is great in that people are so willing to like go to bat for you. They may not necessarily be able to help you themselves, but they'll tee you up with 3 or 4 of their friends that they know are hiring or they know are familiar with, great opportunities.
So then we move into the winter quarter. Recruitment kicks into high gear. What were you looking at for internships?
Yeah, so I was looking sort of I guess you could call it 3 different areas. I was looking at sort of clean technology startups. And very quickly, I found that they don't recruit in winter. They wait until about 2 to 3 months before, and then in a frantic hurry go, oh my God, we could use an intern or 2. So winter, I sort of set my sights on, okay, if I don't get any of these other 2, I'll save that for the spring. I did some consulting prep, figured out I didn't want to do consulting unless it was very specifically in the sort of energy or utility sector. So that was my sort of 1A path. And then I was looking at some of the sustainability or renewable energy programs within bigger tech companies. Microsoft has a fantastic renewable energy program. Amazon's is fantastic and headed by Nat Sahlstrom, who's a NetImpact alumni. Google also has one. So trying to figure out where in those bigger tech companies, how they hire, what programs those live under, where they, because a lot of them just hire sort of MBA interns. They don't necessarily hire energy procurement interns or renewable energy interns. So I spent a lot of time talking to alumni from Foster within those companies, just trying to map to what organization those types of roles would be in, and if those were even something that they had internships in.
And then what happened? Where'd you end up?
So found out that unless you have a very specific background or they are sort of desperately in need, a lot of those bigger tech companies won't really put you in a renewable energy program. That's a full-time hire. They want specific background. So sort of you take your lumps with that and you go, okay, like let's find a consulting gig. And West Monroe is where I ended up doing my summer work in their energies and utilities team. Got placed on a phenomenal project with a phenomenal team and got just an absolute crash course in the energy industry, which I can't thank them enough for. They took a chance on me, and I feel like I did some good work for them, but I definitely feel like I came out the winner in that trade. They gave me so much experience and this great wealth of contacts, both sort of within West Monroe and throughout the broader energy consulting community that I've been able to tap into.
I want to go back to what you said about the big companies with the sustainability or sustainable energy teams. And, I've talked to people who are on those teams. And when I look at their career trajectory, it often goes through, they worked at a utility or they worked with an energy trader.
Yep.
And that's what prepares them for the kind of role at that big company. Now, I think that the MBA offers this opportunity to get some of those experiences and to chart that course a few steps ahead. What does your future look like from here? And we're recording this in February of 2022.
Yeah. So, I mean, man, I wish I could tell you what it looks like.
What are
I'm
some of
still
the
planning.
paths that, back when you first started the program, we did Designing Your Life. You did your 3
Yep.
Odyssey plans. So we talked about the startup. There's the startup path.
Yep.
There was the consulting path.
Yep.
There's the sustainable energy team path, right?
Yeah.
Now that you're 6 months, 5 months from graduating, what do you think those paths look like for you?
Yeah. So right now the startup path is looking like the one where I think I want to be. I feel like I've gotten myself to the point where I can be an asset for those teams and they can sort of take a chance and know what they're getting to some degree. Um, I've just always been enamored with startups. I love the pace. I love that there's just endless opportunities for growth, both personally and from a company standpoint. And I I don't know. I think that startups will play an outsized role in this, you know, massive culturally wide fight that we are all undertaking against climate change, whether we want to or not. It's going on, and I think that a huge portion of that societal lift is going to come from these sort of scrappy underdogs that think they've found a breakthrough and go try to make it work in a marketplace.
So as you said, a lot of those startups, they don't figure out what they need until about 3 months beforehand. So what kind of things are you doing to build that network, to create those opportunities for yourself that may still be, 2 months out from where we're sitting today?
Yeah, so there's been a couple things I've tried to do through some of my work with the clean energy test beds. I got to, meet and got to know just dozens and dozens of both local and national companies that are trying to commercialize technology. Now they're all at varying stages and of various sort of technical complexity, but I've sort of been checking in with them every couple of weeks, every month or so, saying, "Hey, what are your needs going to look like? Are you hiring?" Because you know, I'm playing the odds here, in that if I set up 20 opportunities for myself, like odds are probably 2 or 3 will hit. But what I've been actually seeing is that once that layer of trust is developed, once some of these companies I've been in touch with for 9 months to a year now, they know that I'm serious about it. They know that I've been working on learning the space or learning their product or technology. Like, it's a lot less of a gamble for them than somebody that reaches out once they post a job rec. So that's been something I'm trying to be cognizant of. There's an organization in town called the Clean Tech Alliance, run by a wonderful woman named Mel Clark. And they are basically a support organization for clean technology companies. They help with workforce training. They help with job postings. They do a whole lot to sort of support the greater Seattle clean tech ecosystem. So Mel has been an absolute gem and has been passing opportunities to me to say, "Hey, pass these to your classmates. Let them know that this company is going to be hiring. Let them know that that company is going to be hiring."
And
In
the
addition to
Clean
that,
Tech Alliance,
good.
also runs some great events throughout the year, some breakfast meetings, presentations, the Cascade Clean Tech Accelerator Program,
Yep.
and the Clean Tech Showcase, which is part of that accelerator program, which I think was taken online the last 2 years. They
Yep.
did the showcase, and that's for startups from the Cascadia corridor to present about their businesses to the broader community. And I've attended some of those, and that's really interesting.
Yeah. The
Interesting companies.
Clean Tech Alliance is a fantastic organization. And like, to your point, there's, I don't know, I think I've name checked like 5 or 6 different organizations that I've been involved with here. And there's 20 to 30 more that I've, come across and met people at and just haven't had the time to dive deep into. That what I've sort of found through this whole process is, a lot of somebody described it to me as like a tree setting down roots. If the clean tech or the sustainability industry is setting down roots, they're these super skinny, super narrow, precise roots going down deep and trying to find where they're going to be. And then as those roots grow and spread out, they bring in these broader domains, business expertise, marketing, human resources, all of those sort of come once the roots have been established. And I think where the general industry is at right now is that a lot of the roots have been set, and obviously there's still a whole lot more growing, but you start to see these sort of secondary and tertiary economies pop up around a lot of these companies that, if you think to yourself, hey, I have no sustainability background, I could never work there. Like these companies a lot of the times are getting to the point now where it doesn't matter. Like if you've got a great skill set in your area of expertise, they can find a need for you.
Right. So what you're referring to there is that early on in a startup's life cycle, they're looking for people who have real specific domain expertise in whatever that startup is doing. And as the startup starts to mature, they need to bring in people with different job functions, more diverse skills and experience. So they might need that
Exactly.
biz dev person, they might need the salesperson, they might need the uh, product marketing manager type or the HR
Yep.
person because they're looking to scale up and establish policies. Is there a size or an age of company that you think as they reach that level of maturity where they start to need the MBA generalist skill set that doesn't have the technical background in the sustainability domain that they're working on?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's obviously going to vary depending on what the core business is. But from my sense, it feels like right around the 20 to 45 person mark is when they really are like, hey, we need to go get some MBAs. Some are earlier if they have a founder that's done an MBA that knows sort of the value that it brings. It may be a little earlier. Some, if it's a technical team of founders, they may be a little hesitant because there's definitely some hesitancy from technical folks when you hear the words MBA thrown around. But for me, it seems like it's right in that like 20 to 50 person range is where they really start seeing the value.
Okay, great. I want to just underscore a couple other things you said. Uh, you've mentioned a bunch of organizations. I'll put all of them in the podcast show notes, so you don't
Great.
have to frantically, listeners, you don't have to rewind and find those. They'll all be in the show notes, and you can find those at conversationsoncareers.com, where you can also find other podcasts that I've done on sustainability careers. Another thing that you said that I think is really important is that you have established relationships with a number of these companies. They know you. You're a known quantity now. You've been talking to them for, I think you said, 9 months to a year. So by the time they are putting up a job rack or they're thinking about putting up a job rack, they're going to reach out to you, right? Because they know that this is not a spur of the moment thing for you. It's not a whim. Like, you have demonstrated a commitment to this space.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important to underscore. And I think we heard it at that event recently that sort of spurred this
Right.
conversation. We had a number of alumni show up for an event along with Professor Elizabeth Stearns, who you mentioned, and Katie Cross from Duke Fuqua's Edge Center and the MBA Edge. They said you want to connect the dots. And if you're applying for a position at a sustainability company or a sustainability position at any company, and the only dot is that application, or maybe that application in one project, someone who has multiple dots to connect is going to be a more attractive candidate. So these touch points that you're having with a variety of companies in this space, these multiple touch points, each of those is a dot. And the longer that you're in contact with them, the more serious you look as a candidate for that industry or that role or that organization.
Yeah, 100%. It's been, and I don't even know if it was something that I intentionally tried to do. It's sort of been a result of me wanting to keep tabs on all of these awesome people and companies that I've come across. I didn't approach it with hey, these people may want to hire me one day, I better keep in touch. It was, there's definitely a small piece of that, but it was also like, hey, this company is awesome, and regardless, like, I want to make sure that I check in on them every 3 weeks, every 5 weeks.
Do you have any tips for how you have tracked that? Like, really tactically, how have you tracked these companies? Do you have a spreadsheet? Do you have a calendar where you're putting, reminders on? What are you doing?
Yeah, so I do keep a spreadsheet, just, the power of Excel. The company name, contacts, there. What I don't keep sort of detailed notes about what I talked about unless there was something super specific that I want to make sure I remember. And then as far as sort of the I guess the reminders, the tricks to help remember to do that. I set aside sort of 1 or 2 hours every week and just go through like, hey, which of those folks have I not talked to recently? Which of those do I owe a check-in to? I'm the type that I live by my calendar, so if I don't have it on there, it won't happen. So I just set a recurring reminder sort of every week to set aside an hour, go call 4 or 5 people.
So you're spending about an hour or two a week to circle back, follow up with these companies, have some calls, shoot some emails. How much time are you spending right now on career search more broadly? Like,
Yeah,
is
so
that
right
is that it,
now,
or is there more?
there's probably a little bit more right now. It's maybe 2 hours a week right now. I'm sort of in a position. I'm working part time doing consulting for a local startup called Modern Electron, who I got in touch with through the clean energy test beds. They have been fantastic, and I'm very interested in working with them come graduation. So I would say right now I don't have a ton of internal pressure to go out and do sort of any additional work. If it looks like I'm not going to be working there, I'll probably ratchet that up in the next couple months. But right now it's tempered off a little bit. I'm still doing some outreach. I'm still doing some sort of research and still networking, but it's a lot less um, directed towards finding a specific job.
What advice do you have for students coming into the program or first year students in the program who are looking to pursue a career in sustainability? Like, if you could boil it down to 3 key points of advice, things that you've learned along the way that you think everybody should know, what would they be?
Yeah, I the first one I'm always going to start with is, and it sounds silly, but have a plan. Like you got to have a plan of how you want to approach it. My plan was go out and try to be the in between business and engineering for a lot of these people trying to develop technology. That's changed over time, and I've stress tested it and moved that goal around a little bit. But just having that plan gave me something, on the horizon to look towards and to shoot for. Second would be, test out what your thoughts are, test out what you think those careers are. And that could be as simple as, spend 3 hours with a career professional in an area you want to work at, see how they do their job, ask if you can job shadow, or maybe as in depth as, you try to do an internship in that area. You can it's totally up to an individual person how much time and energy they commit to testing that hypothesis. But the last thing you want to do is say, all right, I want to work in sustainability at an NGO and do that, and then take that job out of school and realize that it's not for you. So I wanted to make sure that coming out of business school that I was in a job that I really, really wanted to be doing. And the only way you really do that is to sort of to test it out. So I guess if I could boil that down to a point, it's just like get out and do it, go out and get that hands-on experience doing what you think it is that you want to do.
We often refer to that as prototyping.
Yeah,
If we remember back to
exactly.
designing your life, so it's prototyping. And I think what's really interesting about what you've done is not only did you look at the summer internship between first and second years as a prototype, but you have created all these other smaller prototypes, like through your work with Clean Energy Testbeds, and now through your work with Modern Electron during your second year, and probably additionally through the Venture Fellows program. So
Yep.
you've had multiple prototypes and not just the one big 10 or 12 week summer internship prototype.
Yeah. No, and I would say that that's been by far the most valuable experience that I've had as an MBA, is this ability to sort of almost without, I don't want to say without consequence, because, you go do good work and people value it. But, there's usually an end date. There's an expiration date on a lot of these projects or tasks or volunteering opportunities. So there's no risk of you sort of losing sight of where you were trying to go, because, the project ends and then you get to decide whether you want to continue down that path or change direction a little bit. And that third thing that I want to come back to is like find a way to just be valuable to those around you. I've tried to make sure that any opportunity I get that is not sort of expressly for me, that I pass along to classmates. Hey, this company's hiring. Hey, this person wants to hire a foster student. And, vice versa, anybody out in the community, I've asked, hey, how can I help you? What can I do? Or do you find value at Foster? Can we put you in touch with the applied strategy team? Do you guys, and I think Max Mankin, CTO of Modern Electron, is coming this Friday to talk about his journey, because I sort of harassed him when we went over and toured his facility. I badgered him like, hey, can I do part-time work for you? Hey, do you have applied strategy projects for Foster? Hey, I want to get sustainability more prominently featured at Foster. Do you guys have capacity to take on students to help with that? So if you can be of service to your classmates or the people that you're trying to network with, you immediately are sort of one of the first people that they think of when cool opportunities come across their desk, and they'll be sure to send them your way.
I love that advice. I think it's far too easy for someone coming into a program like the MBA program to think, oh, I'm just a lowly student. What do I have to offer? But we all have gifts to offer. We all have value that we can bring. And by being generous with our time, by connecting people, even just connecting people is a powerful tool to add value to the community here at Foster and beyond. I think it's a great place to leave it, Mac. I want to thank you for bringing value to the community through this conversation and for reaching out to me to suggest that we have it. I think you've really provided some great advice to anyone who's looking to move into a career in the sustainability space. All of the organizations that we mentioned will be in the show notes at conversationsoncareers.com, where you can also find conversations with a few of Foster alum who have gone on to work in careers in sustainability. And I am sure that we will be talking to you again, Mac, at some point in the future about that career that you have in the sustainability space. So thank you for having this conversation on careers and professional life.
Of course, Gregory. Thanks so much for having me. And if anybody would like to get in touch with me, you can find me on LinkedIn, Mack Hopen, or email mhopen@uw.edu.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Conversations on Careers and Professional Life. I'd love to hear what you think about the podcast. You can email me at gheller@uw.edu. And if you've enjoyed this episode, please share it with a friend or classmate.